And we are live. Mr. Matson, how are you?
You can just call me Sean, man. I appreciate it.
I just like to introduce all my guests that way. But yeah, for the audience that doesn't know you, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so Sean Matson, owner of a company called Mapbach, former Navy SEAL and Division One swimmer.
So tell us more about, I guess, everything, like the journey, like how that all came about.
Yeah, sure. So, I had a family history of my father was in the Navy, my grandfather was in the Navy, my great grandfather, my uncle was in the Coast Guard as a rescue swimmer. But just had this passion to want to go serve the country and initially wanted to be a pilot. When I was growing up, it was Top Gun and things like that. But then at the age of about 13, so I was in fifth grade at the time, 12 or 13. Saw some guys running down the beach and in San Diego out in Coronado, and I was like, oh man, that looks awesome. I enjoyed swimming, and I started telling everybody that I knew that I wanted to go do, and be a SEAL. Started reading some books, from Vietnam era, and was just really interested in that world. And so, fast forward, I went to Virginia Military Institute and graduated there with a degree in civil engineering, and then went on to become a SEAL.
That's awesome, man. And you are number 5 of the Navy SEALs I've interviewed. You're the 5th guy that has been a SEAL. Actually, I always ask this at some point of the interview, but I was wondering if you actually knew any of the guys that I've interviewed because they usually know each other. I don't know if I told you the other ones.
I'm not sure. I don't remember seeing any of the names, but
Stephen Giblin, Will Branham, Jordan Petrovic, recently Chuck Hayes.
I don't know them specifically, but
All right. Yeah. Well, I just thought I would ask because it's a small world. When it
yeah,
comes
it
to
is. What's so weird though is, and this I was, it's small enough where you're basically one degree of separation from, the good things and the bad things. So like, when tragedy happens within the community, you either know somebody or you're the best friends of, a guy that, this happened to. And so, it's a small community. However, like I had a buddy of mine that lived a few doors down from me, and we were on opposite training cycles. I was at team 4 and he was at team 10. But if I didn't know that he was, like, if we weren't friends, I would have never known that he was a SEAL or had any interaction with him, because we were just on complete opposite cycles. And so I like never saw him, even though he lived a few doors down from me.
right. Yeah. Because I've like known like some of the people that I've interviewed. Like the first guy, Stephen Giblin, he was one of the guys who helped to catch Osama bin Laden, and like he did the investigations and stuff into that. And I was like, hey, do you know David Goggins during the interview? And he's like, yeah, I knew Goggins. Like, and he's like, I also knew Jocko Willink,
Yeah.
and same thing with Chuck Hayes. They're both best friends. So they knew, Jocko and David, both of them. But, it's just like I always ask, like, did you know some of the more famous ones? Did you know like any of the guys that I've interviewed? The answer is usually yes, but
Yep.
you know, um, I mean, is there anything you would have liked to work on when it came to the Navy SEALs? Like, what did you exactly work on? What was your job?
Yeah. So I was an officer in the teams. So, you know, guys will say, would you have gone back and, gone and enlisted? And honestly, I don't know. Cause like I was thrown into situations where, as a junior officer and as a, leader in the platoon, or someone who's going to be responsible, if something goes wrong, um, at the end of the day, like I got those opportunities that are very, relatively young, time in the teams and young rank, where, some of the stuff like that, typically, as a junior officer, coming into the teams, they assign you with, and you work really closely with your platoon chief. And so you've got a guy who's 15, 20 years in the teams, who's mentoring you and really working with you to help shape you as a junior officer and things. And so, on the enlisted side, you got to have 15, 20 years to get in some of these situations and some of these conversations and meetings that I was in at, only a couple years in the team. So I really enjoyed my time in. I did 5 deployments, 3 to Iraq, 2 to Africa, did a couple different presidential details, and I in the 13 years that I was in the teams, I had a blast, and would have stayed in longer if I didn't have to go through a divorce and other situations like that. But ultimately, going through a divorce, having 2 kids, it just was not the right fit to stay in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to work on yourself first, always. And when it came to, because you mentioned about presidential details, do you mean as in security for presidents and world leaders, or like what type?
Yeah, exactly. So, teams, depending on they'll, if especially international stuff, not necessarily domestic stuff, but international stuff that goes on, depending on where it's at or what's going on, they'll task some of the, special operations units to come in and augment and work with Secret Service or the CAT teams that are involved with the presidential's movements and things like that. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just had a Secret Service guy on, funny enough. Yeah, he was talking about what it was like working for Bill Clinton, protecting him and stuff.
Mhm.
Super cool job.
Yeah, a lot of their stuff that they do is just unique, and one of the things that I think is really interesting in that is that, like, you have these guys that are uh, essentially protecting, obviously, the president or these people, but they're not always challenged in their TTPs and their tactics, techniques, and procedures. Where, like, and that was one of the things that I thought was interesting when I was active and doing. It's like, like, oh, when was the last time someone actually, like, challenged you guys, in terms of, and they're like, it's been a long time. I mean, like, I mean, there's some little scuffles and stuff like that, but not in the term of where it's going to significantly change maybe how you're doing and protecting or doing things. And so I think it's, one, a testament to, what they do in their job and things like that, but also just, the people know, like, hey, it's just probably not a good idea to try to mess with that.
I mean, I have, a lot of respect for, like, well, number one, your service, but also, Secret Service too. They are a very, very competent group of people. They always get the job done. Because when I was talking to, I, I forget his name. Oh, Robert was his name. So when I was doing the interview with him, I asked him what it was like. Did you ever get to talk to the president? What he was like? Because he did work for Jimmy Carter. He did work for Bill Clinton. Granted, while they were out of office, but he said that the job is purely professional. You rarely ever get to speak to the president. If you do, it's like at absolute best 5 minutes. You'd be lucky.
Mhm.
When he's in the car, he's always on a phone call, whatever. Right?
Mhm.
It's a very complicated job, but ultimately he said that he liked doing it. And he also worked a lot in counterfeit too. You know, because that's a lesser known job of the Secret Service.
Yeah.
But with regards to your service too, did you what was different about like their training, for example? Because their training was like tailored to protecting someone specifically, right? That's what it seems. But your guys' training was more towards combat, but you're put in a position where you're then protecting presence. So like, did they train you differently? Like, how did that work?
No, and so part of it is, they don't want to necessarily change, us or vice versa, right? It is, we're there to learn what they're doing, but then also we're there so that they can learn, some of the stuff. So, like, we would, inevitably, like, ask questions, and they would be like, "Ooh, I don't know, we haven't really thought of that." And then also, like, on our side, right? Like, there was things that were like, "Oh, I didn't think about that either," right? So there's a mutual respect and a mutual thing, just because we see the same problem different, and so we might see different outcomes to stuff just based off of, like I said, like, different tactics and techniques and procedures, and just training, and then just in different situations that we've been in, but also just from the fact that we might be able to provide maybe an alternate route or contingency plan that they weren't thinking about, because we're looking for some of these things sometimes where like it's like, okay, well, they don't typically do stuff in the water, but like we'd like to get back into the water and try to find ways. So it's like, oh, hey, we could actually use this as an egress route if we needed to. And they're like, what? That? All right, well, let's kind of whiteboard what that would look like and plan it out. So there's a mutual respect in that, and that typically we would learn some stuff and then they would learn some stuff.
Well, when it came to, like mapping out potential, like I guess problems, like bad actors or whatever, did that ever come into play when it came into that like mutual perspective?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so there was always, like I said, there was always things like that that would come up on these details. And a lot of them are pretty short too. So they might be 2-3 weeks long for, and then like actually like protecting, or, when the president is there, it might only be 24 hours, 48 hours. So, it's a long period relative to how long they actually they're on ground.
Uh, if you're okay with sharing, which president did you do protection for?
Both of them, both they were all through for Obama during his time as when I was active. So 2005 to 2018 is when I was active.
Were you ever close to him, or was it always from a distance?
Oh no, got to meet him a couple times. Shook his hand. Usually got to get some pictures and stuff like that with him. I mean, typically on those, like because like we're outsiders compared to the Secret Service and those guys. So, they would try to, like, when he was on the ground and doing his like kind of like media thing, they would allow us to come in real quick, get a picture, talk to him for a little bit. Sometimes he would hand guys coins or do stuff like that, and or whatever, or just like ask us some questions. But we kind of like what I think you said Robert, his name, would say. I mean, but it was basically like maybe 5 minutes, and then it was like back to work. So
What would you say if you could like describe what Obama was like?
yeah, I mean, he was fine. I mean, there was very appreciative of what we were doing, and the in terms of engaging with us. I mean, he was nice. I mean, we didn't have any issues with him. I'd say the only thing that I would say negative feedback or whatever, I guess I'd heard with it was typically no matter who the president was, whether Republican or Democrat or whatever, they would say like they would always build in a lot of extra time and movements with Obama, where because he would just blow through timelines where like it's like, okay, we've got this meeting for the next hour. Well, they would know that he was always going to go late, and so they would make sure that they had those extra buffers in there, where other presidents would periodically do that. They would blow through a timeline where it was like it was almost like habitual. Like knew if you're going into a 1 hour meeting, guarantee that you're blowing through this timeline, and not that. And I don't think it was like a disrespectful thing, to the guys or anything like that. I just think that Obama was just good with talking and getting into a conversation, and would basically want to stay into that engagement and not think about the second, third, and fourth order effects that happen. Because like from us, we're trying to plan all these things out, and it's like we got to stick to this timeline, because there's a lot of other moving parts and pieces to the president moving around a different country, especially.
Right. So was this coordinated? Because when I had the interview with him, everything's like very meticulously coordinated, right? And I asked him as a joke, I'm like, if I was the president's son, could I hold a surprise birthday party for him?
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, would that be possible? And he's like, most likely, probably not. That wouldn't happen because everything's planned very specifically, so he would know what he's getting into. But in your,
Well, and like, I mean, you could, right? And it could be a surprise to him, but there would be, hundreds and hundreds of people that knew about it, right? Like, and help make that work, right? But you know, I think it's still, even to that, it would be hard to be like, why is this weird, time on my calendar? But
Well, I
they're
mean, yeah.
it's very meticulous. I mean, it's down to, and this is what I was saying. Like, I don't think it was intentional or disrespectful in that. It just who he is as a person.
Right, very conversational. Most
Mhm.
presidents are conversational though, but I guess more so than others. Because when I was talking to Robert, or Mr. Johnson, you know, when I was talking to him about what it was like working with Bill Clinton, he always said that, he would talk to everybody, that would be people at the airport, whatever, and he was always working. And the politicians that he protected, a lot of times they would work on like little to no sleep. So a very difficult part of that would be that he also had to work on the amount of sleep that they had worked on, right? And this is also, I had like a friend whose dad worked in the Secret Service, and he even said the same thing, that if you were put on a 16-hour shift, you just wouldn't eat or drink in some cases during that 16-hour shift. You would just work,
Yeah.
right? Protecting them, stand by their side, be their bodyguard or look out, whatever. And, that's not one of the perks of the job for sure.
No.
But
No, it definitely is not. I mean, even, like, but you got to think too, like, even though, on some of these things, like, again, especially like international and stuff like that. I mean, and you would rotate with guys and stuff like that just so people aren't tired. But, um, you know, there's 24-hour watch on him and his family and everything, and the surrounding areas and stuff like that. So, you would go do all of his meetings through the day, right? And then you'd come back and he goes to sleep. Well, the security detail doesn't go to sleep. That same security detail that was just with him for that day now goes into a fragmented detail where some guys get some sleep and some guys are on watch, so that there's a 24-hour watch on them. So, it does, it could definitely wear on you. But like I said, you you're only doing it for a couple of days. So, it's not, because then he moves to the next location and there's another group of people there ready to receive him and ready to work with him. Obviously, he has an immediate security detail, and same thing. They're doing a lot of this, kind of same stuff, but it's very coordinated, very choreographed, very meticulous to that. It's an incredible operation when you see it, and just the amount of money, time, and effort to go into protect the president, to just even go visit, you know, a country leader in somewhere.
right, yeah, especially if it's not the United States too.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I mean the times that I did it were not in the U.S. It was always overseas, somewhere.
So when it came to something like that, right? Like what countries were they? Like Afghanistan or
No, no. So I didn't do anything in like war zones specifically, but it was Mexico, South Africa, and so places like that where it's not necessarily, it's not a war zone specifically, but actually got to go in South Africa. We got to go great white shark diving one of the days that we were, like, basically like 12 hours before he was supposed to come into country. We were already done with everything that we needed to do, and so like the section leader was like, "Hey, go take 12 hours off," and we're like, just went straight to the piers and went out on some boats and went great white shark diving, which was awesome.
I can imagine. I've never scuba dived or gone, deep ocean diving myself, but if I
Mhm.
did, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it was
But
definitely cool.
so what was that like when you like went great white shark diving?
So I mean, like, obviously you're in a cage and things like that, but I mean, they chum the waters, they do everything. I mean, it's cold, it's murky. But I mean, you see these just monster, you know, incredible animals just coming out of the, like, you can see them way down deep, And so you just see this kind of like white shadow, and all of a sudden it just comes up and slowly comes up higher and higher and higher up of the water column. And then eventually they see that, there's food there, and they'll just try to attack it and do so. It's cool to see. I got a couple of cool videos, but this was like early days, when GoPros were just starting to come big. So like, I guess 2008, 9 time frame. So like picture quality is not great, but you can definitely make for some good videos.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's always the opportunity to post them on your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
When I was doing work with Obama,
Yeah.
that'd be pretty cool. But speaking of actually your jobs now, what you're currently doing, you're currently a CEO,
Mhm.
correct? So what do you exactly do? Like, what is your company?
Yeah, so the company's called Matbox. So it's Matbock. My last name is Matson. My business partner, his last name is Steinbach. So he and I were both SEALs together. We were class 258. So Bud's class 258. We had like 140 guys that started our class, and 19 of us graduated. So he and I both were part of that 19. And we started this company to develop new gear, new technologies, and now we sell them back to the government, law enforcement, outdoor enthusiasts, kind of run the gamut. But we we pride ourselves in part of our mission is that we're bringing true innovation to the industry. So we look at paradigm shifting technology. So everything from, we've got an autofocus night vision goggle accessory so that you could put right on the end of your MVGs, and then you can see near and far at the same time. So that's probably one of our best selling products. And then other, things like making systems of products so that they all work together, and we kind of we eliminate a lot of excess weight.
So, like, what's your work schedule looking like? Like, are you like working a specific time, or are you just working all the time?
Yeah, I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, there's no work schedule in terms of like it's not a 9 to 5. Like you're a business owner. I live and die by my calendar. Everything is, again, just kind of like how doing in the military, other places. I try to keep things very meticulous. I schedule, just Monday, for example. My wife works part time. So like we schedule dates. I schedule dates with my wife. Right after this, I'm going to go work out. So like I've got it scheduled on my workout, and then I roll into this, to this, to this. And so that way, if, inevitably I have to, adjust, or, something happens in the office, and I need to take care of something, I can go ahead and take care of it, and then I can move whatever block of time that I was supposed to do to another block of time. So I'm very meticulous in trying to schedule things out, and then kind of work on making sure that I accomplish these tasks, and accomplish the things that I need to do. But yeah, there's no defined kind of schedule. But where I do, I have 4 kids. I have a 14, 11, a 4, and a 2-year-old. When I'm home with them, I try to, focus my time on them, spend some time with them. And then once they're done with me, or once they're ready to go to bed, then I can get back to work for a little bit, then I go to sleep. And so then I just start it over the next day.
Yeah. So you mentioned you had 2 kids while you were serving, correct?
Mhm.
Right. So what was that like having kids while you were serving?
So it was, they were younger, so I really didn't understand. It was kind of, honestly, it would have been a lot more difficult if they were older. And it just them understanding what I was doing and where I was going and things like that would have been a lot harder. I think when I got out, my oldest was, oh man, I don't even think 8 maybe. So she was old enough. She obviously understood more than everyone else. But it definitely, it changed your perspective on things. That's for sure. When you have kids and doing those jobs and things like that.
Well, now she's 11, right? The one that you just said was 8, right? Like
Uh,
how?
she's
Yeah.
14 now. Yeah.
Oh, right. 14, 11, 8, and 2,
Yep.
or 4.
14, 11, 4, and 2. Yeah. There's a big gap. So the first two were with a previous marriage, and then my other two are with my wife now.
Right. Yeah. And from the time that you left, right? Like how long has it been since you left the SEALs?
2018. So almost 7 years.
What was it like leaving the SEALs?
Hard. And one aspect, obviously the other aspect, was it, I knew that I needed to do it, but the other part is like that train keeps rolling on, and it's going, and it's going to go full speed ahead. So it's, finding your own new purpose, and it's trying to find, what drives you and motivates you. And so for me, it's my work, it's my working out, and it's my family. So those are like the three things that, I spend time with. I dedicate my time on my calendar to. It's what I want to be, remembered for. My work, especially like the things that we're doing on the technology aspect, and those things are just awesome to be able to bring these products to the market for guys that are still active, so we still keep in contact with them. For my working out, like I hope to just inspire other people to continue to work out and better themselves in that. And then for my family, my hope is that I can lead them to be the best version of themselves that they want to be.
That's a very noble goal, and hopefully it happens.
Yep.
But when it came to, and this is like really going back, right? So you mentioned at the beginning that you were a D1 swimmer. What was that like? What got you into it, and did that help you as a SEAL, considering that they do a lot of swimming in the Navy?
So it definitely did, but also, there's so much more to, SEAL training than just swimming and things like that. So what got me into it was, growing up, I played sports. So I was a swimmer. I played some football, basketball, and about, later on in middle school, I was kind of like, all right, I'm not that good at basketball or football like I am swimming. So then I really started focusing my time on into swimming, and going in and starting to swim, 3 days a week, then 5 days a week, then 6 days a week, then 6 days a week with morning practices and lifting. And so just started really like 2-day practices and other things, and really starting to ramp that up. But, I enjoy swimming. I enjoyed that as a sport, and getting into, doing it at VMI and other things like that. But it definitely helped, going through the SEALs, but it was also different because, like, we swim laps in straight line in a pool. You going out into the ocean, and it's like, all right, go swim 2 miles over there. And you're like, where are the lanes? Like, there's sharks here. There's, all these things that can mess with you. So it's just different.
How was Hell Week?
Um, whole week was fine. Like, yeah, honestly, like, I only had one time, and I think most guys, if I think most SEALs, if not all SEALs, will tell you like that make it through. Like, they didn't have this like, okay, I'm gonna quit, or their verge of quitting. Like for me, I had this like defining moment, and where it was like I knew I could do it, but I also didn't know how to do it. And so it was Tuesday morning, of Hell Week. And so, we'd already been up since Sunday. But it's Tuesday morning of Hell Week, and we're running with our boats on our head. And I was the number 3 position. So in the back, there's another guy in front of me who was in the number 2 position. And he was like, "Hey, Sean, I need to swap out." So I swapped with him. And as soon as I got into that number 2 position, like my head just started ducking, and I started like just like pushing my head down, and I couldn't get in the right position. And like I was just like, God, like help me figure out how to do this. Like I know I can do it, but like how do I keep doing this right now? And it was just like a smack in the face, and it was like, dude, just look up. All you got to do is look up. And so like as soon as I started running in that position, it fixed my posture, it fixed everything I needed, and then I was off and running the rest of the time.
Was there ever any points so you had no points where you were like, I can't do this, I gotta stop, like
No, no, that was literally the only time in it where it was just like, oh crap, like I don't know how to do that. Like I said, I knew I could do it. I kept telling myself, and I knew I could do it, but like I was just like, well, shit, I don't know how to do it right now. And like I know this is where I'm supposed to be. I know this is what I can do, but I just don't know how to do it. And then it was like it was just that like momentary lapse, and I was like that voice that it just hits you inside of you, and it's just like, dude, just look up. That's all you got to do is look up. And so it as soon as I listened to that, I was good.
right. And you were when it came to your cardio, like you were just full steam ahead. There was never any points where that was faltering.
No, no. You know, I didn't go into seals and buds like I like I think some of the guys that have more difficulty with it just overanalyze it, where they know every detail about it. They watch every video, and they know everything about, or they think they know everything about what's going to happen at buds. And then when at like they'll be like, hey, tomorrow is day 3 of the second week, so we're going to be doing this and this, and they could literally like recite everything that's going on. And then when it doesn't happen that way, they freak out, panic, and quit. And I'm like, I knew obviously about seals, and I read books, and I knew, but there's a whole nother level. And I think some of it, excuse me, I think some of it is, today with all the media and social media and just everything out there, I think it hurts guys too, because they get into this like obsessiveness of something as simple. I'll give you an example. I had a guy that I was talking to and was asking me, like through a friend, he was like, hey, this guy wants to be a SEAL. Can you talk to him? And the first question he asked me was, so like the first thing he said to me was, hey, I'm strong on my PT. I've got this. I feel confident here, but I'm really worried about in second phase the dive physics test. And I was just like, hey man, listen, you're not going to make it. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, he's like, you got pretty offensive with it. And I was like, you're worrying about a written test that is literally 1/100th of buds, to the point where you've got 30 minutes with me, and this is your number one question that you want to ask me about is a stupid written test. And I was like, your mindset's wrong. You're not going to make it through. And he got, again, just frustrated with me. And I was like, what else bothers you? And he's like, nothing. I'm not worried about anything. I was like, all right, man. Well, then, good luck. Like, don't worry about the test. Like it's that simple. It's literally a few questions that they ask you about. He's like, well, I'm just not good at taking tests. And I was like, dude, just like stop. It's not something to worry about. They help prepare you. They show you and they go over the test with you. Like it's okay, and it was just like, even if you failed that one test, they wouldn't drop you because you failed one test.
Right, yeah, just people that want to feel like they know everything and control the situation.
Yeah.
So when you saw people quit, what was that like? Like, how does that? Because from my understanding, there's a bell that you can ring to quit. But I don't know if that was still the case for you.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, it has been, I think from the beginning. I don't know of any other class. And yeah, so that's how you quit. You quit with a bell.
what was that like, seeing people quit?
Exciting. And I know like people are like, oh, that's messed up. But again, in my head, like I was like, all right, well, 15 to 20% of us are going to make it, right? Like statistically, that's how every class before us has been, 15 to 20%. So I was like, I just got to be part of that 15 to 20%. Like, that's another person gone. That's another person gone. Like my chances now of getting into that 15 to 20% are getting higher and higher and higher. So, but like I again, I never just like obsessed over like what was coming next, what was going on. I was so focused on just staying to the next thing. It's like, okay, hey, I'm in this, like, all right, this eventually this is going to end. This sucks, but eventually this is going to end, and I would just, move forward through it. And when guys would quit, I just, okay, like I didn't have I really didn't have a lot of like, like close buddies or anything like that. I didn't go with like a big group of guys. Like like I didn't go to the Naval Academy, so there wasn't like a big group of guys or anything like that. I didn't have like this like, like I met all these guys for the first time basically out there. And so like I didn't have a bunch of buddies and things like that. And when guys would come and talk about, how they were obsessing over, whatever it is, like, oh, tomorrow we're going to be doing this. I can't believe it. I just be like, okay, cool, whatever. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know, and just kind of roll with the punches on that stuff. And I think at the end of the day, obviously as the class gets smaller and smaller and smaller, you become good friends with those guys and really start to know who they are and things like that. But I mean, I couldn't even tell you, there's like one story. We had a guy that was post Hell Week. So we had already finished Hell Week, and you're in walk week. And he was I think probably already seeing that he was going to quit. And so the instructors thought that he was going to quit. And so they scheduled this whole thing where they were going to do a swim when we weren't actually supposed to do a swim. And we got to that day, we show up on the beach, and we're waiting there. And all of a sudden the bell goes off, and we'd already finished Hell Week. And so there was only a few of us left. And all of a sudden, like, the bell rings, and we're like, that's weird. What is that? The instructors come over the beach, like, hey, swim secured, go to the classroom. We go in the classroom, and they're like, hey, such and such quit. And we're like, what? And they're like, yeah, that guy, we knew he was going to quit. We knew he was ready to quit. We couldn't get him to quit during Hell Week. So we planned this whole thing. And basically he was trying to get out of the swim and say he was injured and hurt. And they knew that he really wasn't, but he knew that they knew that he was ready to quit. And so that, like I said, they staged this whole swim to just basically make him to quit. And I just thought it was interesting because, like, they saw the guys that were ready to quit, and they could see in their heads or their mind or whatever.
Do you know what happened to a person like after they quit? Like what that would look like?
They depending on their rate and things like that, depends on what happens. But typically they go back to, the fleet and go do that job again, whatever they were doing.
And when it came to people that, you said like people could see it in their heads or whatever that they were going to quit, right? Like I guess the drill instructors, right? When it came to something like that, what separated a person that would quit versus what wouldn't, like in terms of knowing that? How would you know that a person was going to quit in Hell Week?
So I don't know, because I was never an instructor, but the like buddies of mine that went back and they were instructors were just like, it's just weird. Like, you can see it in their eyes that they're ready to quit. And it's just like, you're just kind of help facilitate making sure that they can quit. Like, you can see the guys that are ready to quit and who, and he's like, but again, like, you'd have guys that were, super physically fit and in shape and all these other things like that would quit. And then you have other guys that weren't, that like could barely pass some of the, basic tests, and they would make it through. So it's just like, you never know.
Did you end up with any injuries during your time with the SEALs?
Not going through training, nothing necessarily through that. Like little stuff here or there. I mean, I had some rashes that turned into, I don't even remember the name of the, like like there was like skin infections because of the rashes that would happen. I lost a bunch of toenails and things like that, but nothing catastrophic that forced me to get rolled or again, like think that I needed to quit.
But ultimately, you went through it no problem, and you rolled with the punches, and you seemed like you turned out like you did pretty well in the end when it came to it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, it was what I wanted to do. I mean, from the time I was 12, I wanted to do it. So, basically, by the time I was 20, 21, I guess 22, I'd reached like my life goal. So like 12, I set a goal. By 22, I'd reached that goal. So
And when it comes to, I should say, quitters and people that didn't make it through, and this is in the questions, it's what's a philosophy and mindset you'll never understand.
yeah, I guess the philosophy and understanding, like when a guy quits, I don't know. I obviously didn't happen, but like I think just even on like other things that I've done throughout, right? Like at the end of the day, your mind will play tricks on your body, and your mind will do things that you just are just crazy. But like your body will also do things like you think is unfathomable because your mind will tell it to do it. And so if you approach things with the positive attitude of like I can do this, and that right mindset of things, no matter what it is, like you do it, you put one foot forward after the other and keep moving. Inevitably you're gonna have two results that come out of you making movement to something. You're gonna have the desired outcome that you were hoping for, and then you're gonna have a less than desired outcome of whatever it is, right? And the people that are successful are the ones that take that less than desired outcome and learn from it and grow from it, and then continue to keep moving forward, and kind of keep moving this like up and to the right, if you were to like graph it, right? But inevitably you're going to have some setbacks, you're going to have some pitfalls, or setbacks, or things that come into your situation that ultimately cause you to kind of go downwards or backwards or whatever. But then if you can learn from those and keep moving, then you're ultimately going to continue to progress in that upward outward trend.
Anything you think that more people should be doing in the world?
Working out. First and foremost, I think that there's a lot of benefits to just even doing 15 minutes of push-ups, sit-ups, movement a day. I don't always get the best workouts every day just because of my schedule and things have moved around, but I try to do something, even if I don't necessarily go to the gym or work out in my garage or at the office or whatever. I will try to spend 15 minutes and at least put some kind of effort into getting my heart rate higher, sweating a little bit, and just getting that activity moving. So
So, what does your workout look like when you do work out?
uh a lot of times I superset things. So like I'll do like I'll for example I'm going to do chest and chest and tries today with some cardio. So what I'll do is um, I'll do bench press. I'll do some tricep extensions, and then I'll do some type of core exercise. And so that would be like the first of my superset. So I'll do that 3 times, and then I'll go to another superset, and I'll do maybe um, band extensions with some diamond push-ups, and then some more core. So I try to bring core into each one of those things like that, and just kind of keep working through. So high intensity, or like hit training or Tabatas, all that stuff like that. I enjoy.
When you're not working out or doing work, what do you like doing in your free time?
Spending time with my family. So pretty simple in that. Like I said, those are my three things. It's work, working out, and family. That's what, really, spend time with and do, and then working with family, there are a lot of times it's friends too or other things, but those are the three things that I really, I allow to have time in my calendar and schedule events and do stuff around that.
Any hobbies?
Uh, no, not anymore. I mean, I used to love skydiving. I would still like to go skydiving. I just don't like, I like to go to the range and shoot. I just don't really much anymore. A lot of, like I said, like hanging out with my family, doing things with them. Like we'll go to the parks, we'll go work out, we'll do some of these things. We like to go camping or other things like that. But it's typically like I'm doing those things with my family. Every now and then I'll play golf, but typically when I play golf, it's work related. I go out there with like either customers or clients or sometimes both, sometimes investors, sometimes things like that. But sometimes it's a charity event that I'm doing.
What's it like playing golf, for business? Because I mean, I've heard of that, but people I know that, especially former SEALs, a lot of former SEALs and stuntmen, people that are like super like adventurous people. It's funny, they always tend to play golf.
Yeah.
I had a stuntman on here. He's like my age, but lives down in South Africa. And I'm like, oh, what do you like doing? Like, he's like, oh, I love doing calisthenics. I love, and he's like hopping on his motorcycle, doing like flips on it and stuff. And then I'm like, what else you like doing? What are sports? He's like, I like golf. And I'm like, that's like the total opposite of everything you do. But
Yeah.
when it comes to playing golf for business versus like for pleasure, pure pleasure, what's that like?
So I mean, it's fine. I mean, I don't play a lot. I play a couple times a year when I do it, but typically it's, you're going to like a charity event or you're meeting with like investors. And so it gives you, 4 hours basically to get to know somebody, play with them, joke with them, laugh with them, have a couple drinks with them, um, and just kind of get to know somebody for 3, 4 hours while you're playing this game. And typically whenever I play, it's, we're playing like best ball or something like that. So it's like, it's fun and competitive, but we're all trying to win together type thing. So, um, but it, I'd say for, in terms of, you're mixing, um, you know, getting to know somebody, being outside, and things like that. It's a great way to do it.
Where do you see going with the company? Like in general, do you want to expand it? Are you good with keeping it where it is, or like where do you want to go with it?
I mean, right now we've got about 30 employees. So the potential is to keep growing it out. Ultimately, we've got a holding company with other subsidiaries underneath it. Our goal, Zach Steinbach and I, like our goal with the business is to keep growing. Building out some of these technologies and individual subsidiaries. So ultimately, like we were like, hey, George, you're like, hey, I want to go build a t-shirt company. It's like, all right, well, look, like we think that it could fit into our portfolio of companies and we want to help you do that. So, what we'll do is, we'll help fund it, help, bring you into like, hey, here's our operations, here's our sales team, here's our legal, here's everything that we have on the back end and support for you. We'll help you do this. But it's going to come at a cost because, you're not going to make a lot of money. Like you're going to be putting in the work ethic or work and really working to grow that, whatever it is, your idea, because, if we just gave you a bunch of money and said, hey, look, like, at least in our opinion, if we gave you a whole bunch of money and just said, hey, go build this brand, because you got all the money, you're gonna waste it, instead of, if we don't give you a lot of money but give you some of the resources and set you up for success, at the end of the day you're going to do what we did and you're going to get creative on how to figure out how to grow this business and do it profitably, and so that you're a better leader when you get to at a point where you're making 50 $100 million in a brand, and people are like, um, it's just easier for you to understand those operations when you start from, basically nothing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And with regards to, I guess, time, because this is going back to an earlier topic about sleeping and or lack thereof in some cases, right? And you're talking about working as a whole. When it comes to advice that you give to people that are in positions where they don't get to sleep as often, whether it be a nurse or in some cases maybe a SEAL or, whatever that might be, what advice would you give to those people?
I mean, ultimately, you got to figure out what your body needs, right? Because everybody's body needs different things and at different times in their life too. I would say right now with where I'm at, what I'm doing, I feel like I need a good 7, 8 hours of sleep. So, I will work, I'll work till 10 o'clock and then I might not wake up till, 6 o'clock. But um, I know that I need that 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep to be able to do where like basically from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, I am trying to work and trying to be as efficient as possible and trying to, compress as much as I can in that 18 hours of work basically. And not, just well, I like you talked about hobbies or you talk about other things like I don't sit there and watch TV all the time. I don't watch sports. Like it just to me those are just huge wastes of time because like during that 2 hour show, I could spend 2 hours doing something for the business or spending 2 hours with my kids or whatever that might be. Um, you know, Not to say that we don't watch the show here or there, but it's not like every night it's like, okay, come home, eat dinner, all right, sit on the couch and watch TV for 4 hours, and then okay, time to go to bed. Like that time I'm working. I'm trying to figure out other ways to do stuff, spend time with my kids during that time. And then once they're done with me, get back to work.
What did some of that work look like?
I'd love to say that it's like cool stuff, but it's just a lot of emails and phone calls and, keeping up with people, building relationships, checking in with people, trying to make sure that, constant follow up with them, making sure that, our products are doing well, that they don't have any issues, just a repetitive, you know, constant, we don't want to be lost and people like forget who we are.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you seem like you got a good work ethic in general. It seems like that's something within you, that most people don't have. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But I'm just checking how we're doing on time. Um, so I'm gonna ask you kind of a bit like the last part of the interview, right? I'm just gonna ask you some different questions. What advice would you give to current military personnel?
So current military, my advice to current military, you know, focus on the things that you can affect and change and make those things happen. Don't get so caught up into if you're an '04 and '05, right? Like there's certain things that you can affect and do. You can't affect what happens at the policy level. But if you're constantly giving feedback, you're constantly giving your stuff, eventually, you stay in long enough, eventually you're gonna get to a point where you can make bigger changes or bigger things depending on, but ultimately, just really stay at the level that you're at and make sure that like, again, if you're an officer, you're, a lieutenant or lieutenant commander, 03, 04 range, like especially in the SEAL teams, like my number one job at that level was to make sure that I can employ my guys. So I did everything I could possibly to make sure my guys were set up, administratively, our tactics were set up. I made sure that my job was taking care of those guys. It was not to set policy for, the SEAL teams or broke, moan and complain about how, we don't get to do this or that because, we're a SEAL teams. I'm focused on employing my guys because that was the job that I'm at right now.
Any advice to just anybody who wants to listen?
um, Movement, action will always beat inaction 100% of the time. So, and like I was talking about a little bit ago, it's like you're going to have two results. One maybe it's a desired outcome, and maybe one might be less than a desired outcome. But at the end of the day, if you move and you do action, a result is going to happen. And so, um, I think too often people just get into this analysis paralysis, and they're constantly, evaluating all these things and want things to be perfect. Nothing's perfect. But, if you make a movement and you start acting on something, you're going to get a result. That might be a desired result. It might be a less than desired result. But then from there, you can move again and keep going. So I think at the end of the day, like that would be my biggest advice is action will always win over inaction.
All right. I think that's a pretty good place to end off, both on your time and my time. I'm gonna talk to you for like a minute or two after the show. I'm gonna just stop recording. All right.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. All right. All right. Now.